How do we make sure our communication is clear, concise, and meets both our goals and our audience's goals? We make a pact, that is, we establish our purpose, audience, context, and tone before we even start our communication. Planning and organizing are key strategies for successful communication. By planning ahead, we make sure that we can meet those needs, and by organizing our communication, we ensure our audience understands what we need. In this video, we'll focus on planning, specifically on looking at PACT, our purpose, audience, context, and tone. So let's start with purpose. When we communicate, we want to make sure the goal is clear to both ourselves and to our audience. What do we need to tell them? What do they need to do? These are important questions to ask yourself before you communicate. We also need to be clear about who our audience even is. What types of information do they need? What is our relationship with them? That's going to affect both the content and the tone of our communication. We're also not just communicating our main message, but we also need to provide appropriate context to our audience. We need to think about what type of background information our audience is going to need in order to understand our main message. We also need to think about the channel that we're using to communicate. Does it matter whether we text or email or call? This is also important context for our communication. Our tone is directly influenced by both our goal and our audience. We need to decide how professional or formal our communication needs to be before we start communicating in order to help avoid misunderstandings and causing offense. So let's take a look at an example. In this example, we'll pretend that you're a student who needs to ask for an extension on your assignment. So here we have a basic graphic organizer that takes our purpose, audience, context, and tone, puts them into nice little neat squares to organize our notes. We'll start with purpose and work our way around clockwise. So our purpose, or our goal, is to get an extension on our assignment. Our scenario didn't give us a ton of information, so let's make this up a little bit. We want a 2-day extension on our progress report email. Now for our audience, we know this is our instructor, and we know a few things about our instructor, like they have a lot of students, lots of classes, and they might have plans that depend on the due dates. So this assignment might come before another assignment that we need to make sure we have done before we complete it. Knowing our purpose and audience, we can look at the type of context that we're going to need. The first thing is, why do I need this extension? We don't want to provide too much detail. We don't want to overshare or be, TMI, but we do want to provide a rationale for this request. We also want to make sure that our instructor knows who I am. As we said under audience, they have a lot of students, a lot of classes. Knowing that, we're going to want to make sure we tell them which course they're in, what section you're in, and what program you are. Now we're going to think about the channel that we're picking. We could text, we could maybe send a group chat, we could call. In this case, we're going to go with an email. The reason for that is email is a little bit more formal than things like a text, and it keeps a really good written record of your request. With that in mind, we're going to go back to our audience and add a little more information. This is our communication class, so we want to make sure that we follow proper email etiquette because our audience, our instructor, is going to be conscious of that. So that might change both our content and our tone. And our tone, knowing what our audience is, knowing what our purpose is, we're going to want to be polite, we're going to want to be friendly, and we're going to want to be professional. We are asking for an extension, and sometimes asking for extensions or handing things in late isn't always considered professional. So we want to make sure that we're polite and professional in the way we make this request. That's why the context of why is also important. Now that we've made our way through PACT, let's take a look at what this email might actually look like. So here's our email. I recommend that you pause the video so that you can read through it and then return. Now that you've read through it, let's start going through this. Let's start with our purpose. We acknowledge our purpose right away in our subject line. Standard feature of proper email etiquette is to have a clear subject line. Our goal is stated right there. After our greeting, we begin with stating our purpose, why we're sending this email. I'm asking for an extension on this assignment. We then provide a little bit more detail about our purpose a little bit later on. And we finish our email with our action for our reader. We want our instructor to reply and let us know if this is okay. Those are all aspects of our purpose. Going back to our subject line, we also provide some of our context. Here we have our course code and our section number. At the end of our email, we also provide our name and our program and reiterate that section number again. This was part of our context, important information that knowing our audience is going to be helpful to them. We also have our why right after our first statement in this email. We provide a clear why in order to help persuade our audience and to help them understand why you're making this request. After stating the specifics of why we're asking for this extension, we give the specifics of the extension itself and reiterate that why. This is to show our reader that even though we're requesting an extension which might be considered unprofessional, we have a reason for it and we've made a plan for it. We say here that we're asking for this extension because we got behind, and this extension will help me to actually get through this, that this extension is sufficient. We also indicate our tone and acknowledgement of our audience right up front in our greeting. We start with good morning, not hey, hi, or what's up. This is a little bit more formal, but it's still polite and friendly without being too formal. We of course also include our pleases and thank yous. So we're making sure that we're being polite, acknowledging that we're making a request of someone, and thanking them for that. So as you can see, by mapping out PACT before we begin to write this email, we can make sure that our email is concise, direct, and to the point. We want to make sure that we acknowledge and consider our purpose, audience, context, and tone prior to beginning writing so that we can make sure our writing process goes smoothly and that we include all of the information necessary. This also helps ensure that not only are we meeting our goals, but we're also considering the needs and goals of our audience. By doing that, we can help prevent conflict, we can help prevent misunderstandings, and just be better communicators all around. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.